When the Red Wings went all out in 2002 with a core full of NHL superstars, we saw many other NHL teams attempt to create their own style of a super team. Most of their attempts were unsuccessful. However, there was one team who looked like they had the elite core to form the next super team. There's been countless attempts at forming a team of superstars, but one attempt actually almost worked back in 2003, but they fell short of expectations. So today, we'll be looking at and examining what went wrong to the failed NHL Superteam. The Colorado Avalanche were a few years removed from their last Stanley Cup victory and were still hoping to compete. With their core of Joe Sakic and Peter Forsberg, their core was still one of the best in hockey. And with the free agent market opening up and the Avs wanting to make a splash, they went all in hopes of clinching one last Stanley Cup. There were a few big names in the market, two including NHL superstars Paul Kariya and Teemu Selanne. With Patrick Waugh hanging up the skates that offseason, they used the extra cap space to sign the legendary duo. Both Kariya and Selanne were still on their quest for the cup, so both would take semi-team friendly deals to join the roster. The Avs' only problem was their hole in net. With Waugh's retirement, everything was up in the air, and someone had to step up, and David Abisher did just that. As the season began, the team looked destined to win a cup. The main core now consisted of Sakic, Forsberg, Hayjuk, newly acquired Selanne and Kariya, Foote and Blake in the back end, and studs like Alex Tanguay and a reliable 22-year-old John Michael Lyles. All eyes were on David Abisher, however, who would have to fill the void while left behind. And believe it or not, Abisher would actually have a better season statistically than Waugh did the year prior. Abisher would finish the season with a .924 save percentage and a .209 goals against average. Waugh, before hanging up the skates, would finish his last year with a .920 save percentage and a .218 goals against average. Abisher was drafted by the Avs in 1977 and always produced solid numbers. He'd rise to the occasion when needed, as he'd finished the season with a record of 33, 19, and 9, his highest win total in his career. With the team icing 5 Hall of Famers on a nightly basis, you would think this team would have dominated, clinched the President's Trophy, and then cruised straight to the final, right? Well, besides Abisher's impressive performance, this team would completely fail to meet expectations. The Avs had one problem that season: injuries. Two noticeable injuries caused the demise of the team. Peter Forsberg was hoping to continue his dominance following an MVP season where he'd lead the league in scoring. However, injuries would force Forsberg to miss out on half the season, only playing a total of 39 games. Newly signed Paul Kariya would once again fight an injury that would cause him to miss half the season as well. With two main offensive pieces out of the lineup, the team would fall to 4th place in the standings. Teemu Selanne would have an underwhelming year as well, actually posting the worst stat line of his career that season with 32 points in 78 games. There were a few players who benefited, however, such as Alex Tanguay, who proved he was a reliable up-and-coming goal scorer. Tanguay would produce 79 points that year, becoming second on the team production-wise. Rob Blake would also benefit, carrying a blue line that was one of the best in the league that season. The Avalanche would still qualify for the playoffs, finishing the season with a 40, 22, 13, and 7 record, and finishing second in the division. They'd face the Stars in round 1, knocking them out in 6 games, but the following series against the San Jose Sharks, everything went downhill. The Sharks would win the series in 5, eventually losing in the Western Conference Final to the Calgary Flames. That loss would be the turning point for the franchise. After the NHL lockout, the implication of the salary cap would cause the Avs to lose several key players of free agency. Kariya and Selanne would leave, and then longtime Avalanche Adam Foote and Peter Forsberg would be let go, signifying a new age of Avs hockey. They'd still make the playoffs but would be swept by the Mighty Ducks. A day afterwards, their longtime GM would resign, and by 2006, Sakic and Hayjuk would be the only two remaining from the Avs' glory days. One last attempt for a Stanley Cup would lead to the demise of the team. Similar to the Waugh trade, Abisher would be shipped off to Montreal for Jose Theodore. The move proved unsuccessful, and the team would miss out in the playoffs for the first time since 1993. The story of the 03 Avs is both tragic and heartbreaking. One final attempt to cap off the legacy dynasty would end up being more of a risk than reward. The injury bug caught up to him, and when the new age of hockey began, they couldn't keep up. The Avalanche of the early 2000s will always have a special place in hockey history, but what works for one team doesn't work for another, and trying to once again outwit their longtime rivals would cause the collapse of the legendary team. No one could have predicted what was to come, and no one could really complain. 2 Stanley Cups and a dominant streak is all one could really ask for, but all it took was for one super team to pave the way to glory that would cause other franchises to risk it all for Lord Stanley's Cup.
It's good players on the papers, but hard work wins the cup, not just talent.